Hey everyone, I have Professor Matt coming on again. How are you, Matt?
Good afternoon, Fred. I'm very well, thank you. It's got some nice weather here in the mid-state, so Tennessee is smiling sunshine, as you can imagine, so that's good. Other
The
than
leaves
that,
on the ground here. It's November in New Jersey. You could tell it's
yeah,
almost Thanksgiving time.
I,
Yep.
I don't understand. I understand that you guys are really heading for drought now, and that's pretty serious.
I don't buy it. I don't buy it. We'll see. I mean,
Yeah.
we haven't had rain in a couple of days, but when we do get rain, it rains forever. So
Yeah, well, that's good. We had that from Saturday afternoon until late Sunday. It just rained for a while. Didn't have to go out and water the plants, but it didn't
So,
rain
last time
yesterday.
we were on, we were talking about the election and what's going to happen and the dollar and the markets and interest rates. And we've had the election and we've had 3 days, I guess, to almost a week now to digest it all. And what are you thinking?
A couple of things come to mind. The first thing that comes to mind is there's always a complaint from one side or the other about the electoral college. Do we need it? Should we have it? Blah blah blah. Well, the electoral college, obviously, Donald Trump managed to get the 270 votes. Is the or the total at the moment is 312 for him, 226 for Vice President Harris. But I think what's more telling uh, is the fact that Donald Trump took the majority of the voters. The last count, he had over 75 million. She had close to 72 million. It's no landslide by any means, but it's he has 50.2% of the vote. She has 48.1% of the vote. If you want to spend the time to break down what's happened and how that occurred, you can. But I think the one thing you can take out of this election is neither candidate was a prime choice for many. It's not like, oh, I want him or I want her. Some wanted him very badly, some wanted her very badly. But I always find it interesting, and considering the fact that Donald Trump is the first Republican to garner a majority of the votes since George Bush in 2004, we all know that there are more registered Democrats in the United States than there are registered Republicans. So if everybody votes party line, they win. Democrats win. If they don't, then the Republicans get a chance, and they can win. Uh, I think what you saw this year is a number of registered Democrats saying, "I, I don't want to vote for her. I cannot vote for him," and so they didn't
Well,
vote.
no, I disagree with that. I think that the totals were very similar to what we've seen in previous years, with the exception of the last presidential election 4 years ago, where there was a missing 10 million votes. Other than that, I think the numbers have been static. I think voters are coming out. I disagree with you in that it wasn't a landslide. I think the fact that Trump was able to win all of the swing states. He was able to, the Senate rode on his coattails. Now it's the majority in the Senate. It looks like there's going to be a majority in the House again. Last total I saw was 214 with about 10 Republicans, congressmen that leading
Yeah,
this,
that's similar.
leading.
That's similar to what I saw. But you know, I think that voters looked at different things this time. I think that voters looked at inflation. I mean, the power of inflation as a popularity eroder is very strong. And it's not only here in the United States. Every G7 nation, Canada, France, Great Britain, Germany, Italy, Japan, they all their leaders are underwater in approval ratings. If you go back to every president, back to Richard Nixon, who ran for re-election and won with an approval rating of 50% higher, but lost if they had an approval rating below 50%. Biden's approval rating was 39. Harris they never really showed it, but I think, I really believe America looked for a change.
Well,
Yeah.
I spoke to somebody who was outside of the country today. Is living in Italy, in fact, and he said he was very anti-Trump. Obviously, he didn't vote. He's not an American citizen, but he
Hmm.
obviously followed the election very closely. And he said to me, I didn't vote, and I know we've had some discussions on it in the past. And he said today, you know, I think he was probably the right guy. He said, he watched the Rogan Trump interview,
Right.
and that fully swayed him. And I thought it was interesting. He said, I think like Joe Rogan. I think like Elon Musk. If these guys like him, respect him, follow him, then what am I missing? And I think and he came to me and said, I think I've been lied to for 4 years. So,
Well,
well,
I mean,
that was just one man's opinion, but I thought it was very interesting because he was affected by Rogan and Musk.
I think and I don't want to disparage anything, but I really think the Democrats ran a poor campaign. Uh, Knowing the power
Without a
of
doubt.
Joe Rogan, and she was invited. I don't know why Vice President Harris didn't take that opportunity. Um, Going on The View or going on Oprah, things of that's not going to do it. And I think it's interesting to see how Donald Trump made inroads with the Latino vote, with the 20 to 29 vote. He may not have won, taken them over, but the inroads that he made certainly made it possible to take those swing states. And I really believe that, when you look at at how the votes went, and you look at the states and things of that nature, people tend to ignore middle America because it's
Yeah, it's
not
always
it's
it's
not
always been underpolled.
and I mean, look, let's call a spade a spade. This wasn't a 49 state victory like Richard Nixon had in 1972 or Ronald Reagan had in 1984. This was a closely fought contest. Um, when you get a closely fought contest, one's going to win, one's going to lose. And the reason I believe that Kamala Harris lost the election was some of the choices she made were not the best of choices. I think she should have made a better choice than her vice presidential candidate. I really
Obviously,
believe that Senator Kelly in
absolutely.
Arizona or Governor Shapiro of Pennsylvania would have been stronger, would have helped her gain more popularity. I don't know.
I just want to go back to your comment that she ran a poor campaign, and I think the Democrats have been running for the last 4 years under a different ideology. And further on X and Joe Rogan, somebody said the Democrats need a Joe Rogan of their own, and the reply was they had one, and his name was Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan endorsed Bernie Sanders. He's been a Democrat,
Well,
and
that
he
was
just
interesting.
came out and said, "Yeah, you've gone too far to the left for me."
I've thought for the last few years, to be perfectly honest with you, and I hope I can say this without getting any, and I guess I can. It's just my opinion. I thought for the last few years, Bernie Sanders was a crackpot, really, just nuts. Off on a different tangent and orbiting the
Mhm.
Earth on a different axis. But I saw him on Face the Nation on Sunday, and what he had to say was spot on. I think, quite honestly, the Democrats swung and missed. It's as simple as that. I
Mhm.
really believe they swung and missed. Now, you could start pointing fingers. I promise you, if I pointed fingers, I wouldn't blame George Clooney like a lot of them were doing. I don't get how that happens, but you know, I think the main problem with the Democratic Party pre-election was, for whatever reason, and you and I will never know the reason, but for whatever reason, they could not convince Joe Biden to issue the statement like Lyndon Johnson issued way before the campaigning started. You don't become uh, too old to run in a week and a half. All right. Um, Now look, we're arguing about Joe Biden being 81 and too old to run, and we're talking about a 78-year-old who we just elected as president. And Bernie Sanders won re-election at 83. When Bernie Sanders finishes his God willing, when he finishes
He'll be
his
89.
term, he'll be
Yeah.
89 years old.
Yeah.
All right. And every time I look at Bernie Sanders, I don't know why, but I think of Larry Davis. But if Joe Biden would have made the statement in March, I shall not seek and I will not accept,
Right.
echoing President Johnson in 1964, the Democrats would have had time It could have been anybody. I'm not going to start mentioning Democrats, but there would have been an open forum for Democratic candidates. I really believe that I'm not disparaging this woman in any way, shape, or form. I really believe there were stronger candidates to run for president in the Democratic Party than Kamala Harris. That's all. And I think, that initial surge that she got from the debate that she technically did win, I think that popularity eroded. Did the assassination attempts help Donald Trump? Absolutely. I mean,
Hmm.
it's just you want to call it a sympathy vote. I don't care what you want to call it. We joke about it, we laugh about it, but getting shot and then standing up and raising your hand and saying "fight, fight, fight," you want to call it, theatrical, call it whatever you want. It worked.
Yeah.
It worked.
Yeah.
Simple as that. Should she have done more serious media interviews, stronger interviews? Maybe she should have. I thought from the very beginning when she picked Tim Walz, it was a bad mistake. As I said before, I thought Kelly or Shapiro would have given her more support. And, you know, who do you blame for that? Who do you blame for that? The Democratic Party is eroding in front of our eyes by listening to Chuck Schumer and listening to Nancy Pelosi and not really forming a strong nucleus of younger, more talented people. The Democratic Party has talented people. They're just not they're not focusing on them. And I think as long as that continues, it bodes well for the Republican Party. It just,
Mhm.
what will Donald Trump do? Well, he's going, we don't want to make this all political. We want to talk about the markets. Well, look at the markets.
Yeah.
The dollar has been stronger since he's been elected. Why has the dollar been stronger? Because interest rates will creep up in his presidency, I believe, because
Well,
tariffs will create problems. Not, I mean, tariffs. Oh, good. We're going to beat back thing. Should they put a tariff on Mexican auto imports if if the Chinese industry builds a car plant in Mexico so that Mexico can import cars to the United States? You're damn straight they should. There's a definite tariff. You know, I don't believe his strong tariffs will affect the EU. I think he'll come up with they'll and with Great Britain. I think they'll work together. That'll be
yeah.
fine.
It's
That'll
a stick that he's going to use. It's a tool that he's going to use. He starts here and he's going to negotiate it back down. Absolutely.
all right.
But I think there's going to be capital inflows. We've said this in the past. I just think initially he's going to talk the dollar down in order to get it up.
Well, he hasn't
You know,
spoken the dollar at all. The dollar reaction since he's been elected
no,
has only been because of as the stock market until today, and the stock market reaction was mostly led by certain stocks like bank stocks, which expect to be less regulated, so that'll work. Stock market closed down today a little over 320 points. There's nothing wrong with that. We've been traders all our lives. How many times a day? You can't just keep going up, 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 up. You got to
the
take profit.
question is, do you think the average investor or the speculator is long stocks, long the dollar right now?
Well,
I do.
I've started this since 2016 with the classes that I taught, and as we went over the years, I said, look, in 2016 when Donald Trump was elected president, this had nothing to do with Donald Trump. All right, let's get one thing straight: the economy really has nothing to do with the president, and I've said this a
Mhm.
thousand times. But when Donald Trump was elected president, the Dow was at 16,000. It's at 43,000 now. So forget about buying this stock or that stock. If you'd have bought the Dow in 2016, except for some serious drop off at the beginning of COVID, you'd be okay. Does the regular investor, is he making money now? I gotta believe he is. Except you have to ask yourself, when did they step into the market? But the way the market has moved in the last 6 weeks,
Well, I'm not talking about the speculative. I'm talking
no,
about the hedge funds that have been playing this game for the last couple of months, trying betting on the election, and they really jumped into it. We had a big surge um, the day after election day, the night of election. day, I think the market is well long. I
Oh
think
yeah.
the market is well long the dollar, and I think it's poised for some serious profit
Well,
taking.
if you look at, I mean,
And then,
all you have to do is when you get a moment after you finish the podcast, go on any technical chart, and you'll see that the euro is trending lower, and that the pound is trending lower, and that the Canadian dollar is reaching highs that they haven't seen in 7 months. Yes,
yeah,
you're 100% correct. And if you look at the RSIs, almost everything is either overbought or oversold. I agree
right.
with you 100%. Will it turn around? Well, there's no reason right now for Donald Trump to honestly make a comment about the U.S. dollar. He's not the president yet. You know,
He's
he's,
made a comment about everything else. You know,
I understand. But at some point, you have to think that he'll listen to somebody sometime. So I'm assuming he'll listen to somebody about this. I can't imagine any president not stating that we believe in a strong dollar policy, even though we know they don't. But if
well,
anybody
we know
would say, if
Vance,
anybody would say that, it would be him. And if he
JD
says,
Vance has been talking down the dollar in the campaign. You know, he's been doing
if
that for a while.
if they think
So,
if they, but yeah, but okay, so tell me this. I mean, you've been around the markets long enough. You know, we've had these videos with telling all the old stories. But tell me this: if J.D. Vance is talking down the dollar, why is the dollar index over 106 today, close to 107?
well,
Tell me.
I think it's capital flows. I think people want to get in, but I think sooner or later there's not going to be buyers to bid it up now.
All
I
right.
think we're going to have some. I think we're going to have a sell off,
So pick a
and I think
currency.
it's
Pick a
pretty
currency.
attractive.
Euro. Pick a currency. Euro's trading around 106 and a half. Is euro going to 115?
112, 110, 112.
Well,
Yeah,
I think a lot of that will have to do with how you know the United States and the EU agree on trade regulation. I think a lot of that with the pound will have to be how the United States, you know, obviously you look at the Mexican peso. You know, if you bought dollar peso a week and a half ago, you could probably retire. But
right.
that's a serious one. But I don't think these 20% threats for Mexico will hold up because of, as I said this on previous podcasts, because of USCMA. You know, the United States, Mexico, and Canada are really entrenched. You know, it's like if you try to untangle, you know how you pull out a bunch of headsets and you try to untangle all the wires. Right now, that's the way it is. Now, that's not to say that Donald Trump doesn't, you know, go after Mexico and go after Canada as well. You know, we all know for a fact that he'll go after anybody if he feels he's protecting the United States. And
And if
I'm
it's
not
in his
saying that's
benefit,
right.
yeah.
I'm not saying that's right. I'm just saying you know, the the interesting fact here is, you know, when a president is reelected, you know, had he been reelected in 2020, well, we knew what he was doing and he'd continue doing it. He's had 4 years off.
Hmm.
Are we to assume that he picks up where he dropped off on January 20th, 2021? Or are we to assume that he's taken some ideas, listened to some people? We know who we're talking about now, okay? We're talking about a headstrong businessman who, my way or the highway guy, but that's not the way the presidency works. And if he doesn't realize that, and the other thing we have to think about is it's 2 years, pretty much. By the end of his second year, he's a lame duck president. By the end, you know, depending upon what he does in the first 2 years will depend upon what Congress is like in the midterm. You know,
Right.
if he does things that are totally turning off the country, well, then Republicans will lose the majority
Lose
in
the
the
house.
Senate and in the House, and there you go again. Then for 2 years, you'll just be, I want this blocked, I want that blocked, and we'll just go nowheres until 2028. It's
Well, I think there's a different mindset now, and I've had this argument with a couple of people. I think that the media has changed focus. Come election night, the media realized that they made a mistake. That for the last, I want to say 12 years now, I guess it is, maybe more, that they've been, or I guess 16 years, that they've focused on a far left agenda and they've been pushing that. And that they don't have, they've indoctrinated people. And now I don't think they have that cover anymore.
well,
So
what
I
you
think
get.
the media,
what what you
Change the tune.
what you see is that obviously all of their, if that was the case, all left hand, and we know it was the case. We can quote different news agencies. We don't have to be bothered doing that now. If you want to look at it that way, it didn't work. Okay,
Right,
America looked at the news media and said, "I think you're full of baloney," and voted the other way. All right,
right.
but you're on social media as often as I am. Some of the, you have to watch your fingers that you don't get yourself in trouble. Some of the postings on Facebook, I can't sleep, I can't this, I can't that.
Right, because
It's
those
enough.
people have had the cover of the media, and
It's
I'm
enough.
saying I
I
don't
mean,
think that's gonna be there anymore.
what
So I think
happened?
it's gonna be a different spin for the
What
next 4
what
years.
happened? You wanted Harris, he wanted Trump. Trump won. Okay, you know, when your kids were growing up, and something happened, and they started crying, you comforted them. And then after they continued crying, you turned around and said, get over it. All
Right.
right. I'm having a nightmare every night. I wake up, he's still president. He's still going to be president. And after the 500,000, after the women's march and the men's march, guess what? He's still going to be president. All right. So maybe instead of taking the effort to walk around and complain and cry, this should be day one of the Democratic Party reorganizing and trying to figure out what they need to do to win in 2028. That's the way politics works. You bring
Come
up
more
your
to the
guy,
center.
I bring up my
But
guy, you win,
I think
I
what
work.
I think what everybody realizes, you have to come more to the center,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
So,
But,
and that's my point, that the media was so far left that now they're gonna come more to the center, and these people won't be as triggered because they won't be as indoctrinated.
when
So I
you're
think the
starting to see
election in
things
2
from
years.
CNN that are more middle,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
that's good. And, you know,
So that's why I think the next, if he can do anything constructive, the next 2 years is going to be status quo. Keep moving forward. I don't think there's going to be a big change in policy.
I hope you're
But
right.
just getting back to the dollar and the markets, I don't disagree that there's going to be capital inflows. I think he's done it in the past. He talked about it, and we did see companies bring. There's going to be tax advantages. That's all going to be fine. But initially, I think there's an overhang. There's a lot of long dollar positions in the market. There's a lot of long equity positions in the market. I think the bond trade is crowded now too, but that's a longer term bet. I think inflation's still going to be around. I don't see that changing anytime soon. So I still think we're going to see bond sell off. And in the short term, I think what about gold? We've seen a lot of profit
Well,
taking out of gold.
we joked about, gold is sold off, but more important than gold for a moment, what about Bitcoin? I mean,
Yeah,
people joked
90,000
about
it looks
Bitcoin
like.
6 months ago, and now Bitcoin's it's top 90,000. I mean, is there any doubt in your mind that Bitcoin will reach 100,000? It may,
Yeah.
it may top off around there, but it's going to. So, as far as equities are concerned, I don't see a strong sell-off in equities. I think we get back to it. We now get into the calming session. Obviously, getting into December, things
Well,
are going
let's
to.
look at sectors for a second. Drill, baby, drill. What do you do with oil companies? What do you do with that whole sector? I guess you buy producers and you sell oil. Is that the trade? What?
Well, oil prices should go down. I mean, the
Right.
only problem with oil prices going down is I think OPEC just cut output for next year.
Okay.
So that's going to hold you back. But if he's going to open up some of the drilling sites that President Biden closed, it's going to create more flow. It should lower prices. I don't know about you, but I've seen gas prices come down in the last couple of weeks before the election. It has nothing
Yeah, before the
to
election.
do with the election, but they've stayed down. I think bank stocks, based on the fact that there'll be easier regulation, I think bank stocks are a good stock to look at.
Hmm.
AI stocks continue to bode well. I think you got to keep one thing in mind. I think, and if I'm not sure, I'm not certain, I think it's either tomorrow or Friday, NVIDIA comes into the Dow.
Right. Right.
So the Dow is certainly going to get a boost on that, I would think, because
To go into the Dow, Is it the
Going into
Dow?
the
Yeah.
Dow. It's going into the
Yeah.
Dow. So is that gonna create a
So
sell?
what's coming out? Which one is coming
I
out?
want to say Intel, but I'm not sure.
I think you're right.
But my point is that going to affect the S&P? Everybody keeps talking about the highest, the record-setting Dow, 44,000. The S&P went over 6,000 yesterday, and now you're going to take out a major function. A lot of the S&P upward movement was due to AI. Well, the other AIs are going to stay there, but the big guys leave. I think the next week is going to be interesting to look at how the equity markets go. I think a week from Friday, seriously, is when you can sit down and say, okay, here's what's going on. Because you've had a week of NVIDIA, and there's going to continue to be profit taking. You're coming into December, you're coming into end of year. All right? All of this stuff is going to work out. You have to tell me, with a Dow at 43.5 or 44,000, when do you get concerned? Now, I don't have the charts in front of me right now, but if the Dow goes from where it is today down to 40,000 in the next week and a half, is that a bad thing? Or is that just a, easing off of taking profit and leveling off
I
and
think it would
trading?
shock a lot of people. I think it would shock a lot of people, and you have money moving to weak hands. You know, what
I'm
was the
just
old thing back in the day? The mice are dancing on the
Yeah,
tables.
yeah, no, no, no. I'm not saying it's going to do that, but I'm saying
Right.
what is the overall reaction? The biggest thing you don't want to hear is you don't want to hear somebody say it broke a pivot point. If it breaks down through a pivot point, that's the danger. Same thing with the euro, like in the currencies. Euro. As long as euro stays above 106, it should be okay. If it goes below 106, then long-term charters start talking, and then the P word comes out. And once you hear the P word, everybody goes crazy. It hasn't gone to parity since I don't know when. It's not going to parity now. But these are the things that if you bought dollars 2 weeks ago, all right, and the dollar stays relatively resilient into the Thanksgiving holiday. Hey, I'm going to be away for 5 days. Let me square my position. Let me take a look at it. So that, and not you, I'm talking about the big U's.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
How many times do we always square our positions before we went? What certain institutions we both worked for, you weren't allowed to carry positions over a vacation. You went on
Right.
vacation, you had to square up, or you had to, if you could convince your boss that this was a good position, you had to transfer it out of your portfolio into his portfolio for the 2 weeks you were away. Things like that. And then, of course, anything you made over those 2 weeks, he kept because. But
I know that.
we're not talking about specific people who will get sued if we mention their name. But
But another sector I want to talk about is healthcare. I think if RFK is in the administration as HHS, I think pharmaceuticals are in for a
yeah,
loop.
I don't like that idea. I think it's very dangerous. When you talk about healthcare, the first thing I think about is my healthcare, Medicaid, and with Patty still working, being on her health plan, and there's got to be a massive restructuring of the healthcare industry.
I don't disagree, but that's not going to happen in the next
No,
year.
no, but
But
I
they've
don't
been
I
trying
don't
to
know
do
that
it for the last
I don't
20
know that
years.
he's going to get that. I
Well, let's assume he does one thing. You watch a lot of sports. Last Sunday I watched a lot of football, and there's a pharmaceutical commercial every
Yeah.
break.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely.
So what if they limit the amount of commercial time? So now you hurt the pharmaceutical company. You also hurt the networks.
Do you really? Now you're talking about an industry, the National Football League.
Not talking about the NFL. I'm talking
Well,
about the
you're okay.
networks.
You're talking about the NFL, Major League Baseball, National Hockey League, the National Basketball Association. You take those four together. You don't think they could beat down Robert Kennedy? Come on. I mean, that's not going to
I don't
happen.
know.
I, I,
I don't
I'd
know.
be, I'd
I
be
think
surprised if it did.
I think his big push is make America healthy, and
All
I
right.
think he's got it. I think he's got the pharmaceutical companies at the end of his nose.
Well, he's certainly, they're
He's
certainly
put out a
scared
lot of.
about that. They're certainly concerned. Let's put it. Certainly concerned. I'll give you one then. What do you think about the non-taxation of waiters and waitresses and anybody's tips? And what do you think about the non-taxation of Social Security? Do you think that's going to go through? Do you think that's going to happen?
It's going to be tough to vote against it, right?
Well, let's put it this
And
way.
he's also talking about no tax on overtime also.
Yeah, if
That
my
was
two
another thing that
senators
was brought up.
if my two senators vote against Social Security, now
Yeah.
before I say it, I'll go one step further. From the moment I decided to collect Social Security, even before that, I've always thought that it was an atrocity that a senior citizen pay taxes on his pension or her pension,
Of course.
because that's what Social Security is. All right.
Yep.
So I can't imagine if this goes to the Senate and the House, like you said. Somebody will vote against it. They'll vote for it. It's going to raise prices on other things because they're going to have to make up the taxes on other things. But many of those other things, senior citizens won't be involved with. Healthcare concerns me because I see the nonsense still with insurance companies today. I had to wait 3 weeks to get an MRI. No, I had to wait 8 weeks going through physical therapy to get an MRI on my back. I finally got the MRI. Then I had to wait a week and a half to get the doctor to see it. And then after the doctor saw it, now he said, okay, you can get the shots because there's a problem between my discs. So they called me up today and they tell me today is November 12th. We can see you November 26th. Well, no, you can't. I'm going away. Okay, we'll see you December 4th. So I've got a month now to continue through pain, and I believe a lot of that has to do with the degeneration of the healthcare system here in the United States. So
Yeah.
I don't think
When I
Robert
say
Kennedy's
healthcare,
going to
I
help
mean
me.
more.
I don't think Robert
I think
Kennedy's
more
going to
the
help me.
I think more the pharmaceutical companies.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, obviously, if Robert Kennedy gets nominated for that post position, you will see pharmaceutical stocks sell off, no doubt.
You've seen them already.
Well,
You've seen them
again,
already.
because the same way you're buying bank stocks in anticipation of lesser regulations, you're selling pharmaceutical stocks on the anticipation that Robert Kennedy
More
gets this
regulations.
stock. Well, what
Yeah.
happens if he doesn't get it? You just go buy the stock back.
Yeah. Okay.
That's all. If he does get it,
Right.
you got out. You got out in time.
Right.
You know, I don't know. I think some of the nominations he's made were good ones. The way they went all over him about feminism, naming Susie Wiles as his chief of staff. I mean, she's good to begin with, but it doesn't hurt that she's a woman. Let's leave it at that. Elise Stefanik, she certainly has been on his side from the very beginning. I think she'll make
Right.
an excellent United Nations ambassador. I'm personally disappointed that he made the comments about Nikki Haley. If he had no intention of putting Nikki Haley in his cabinet, just don't say anything. Just don't say
Not his
anything.
way. That's not his way.
This
That's his
afternoon,
retribution.
Mike Huckabee, ambassador to Israel. I've always been a big fan
Is
of.
that what
Yeah,
he put? Oh,
yeah. I've
okay.
always been a
Yeah.
big fan of Mike Huckabee. His television show is actually taped right down the road here.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we've been thinking about going to it. Lee Zeldin, environmental protection. That to me is a thank you for
I
all your
don't know
help.
what his background is exactly.
He
I
has
don't know
no
what.
idea what this is about.
Right.
Hopefully, he'll take a crack course. I'm interested to see Homeland Security. Uh, the what do you call it? The rumors of Marco Rubio as Secretary of State. That's a big one because he is he's a hawk. You know,
I know.
he's strong on China, tough on China. Is that good or bad, Marco
Yeah,
Rubio?
I don't know.
You
I don't
know,
know.
um,
Jury's out to me. I haven't really.
I'm
You know.
interested to see who gets the Senate majority. It should be Rick Scott from Florida, but I don't know. And then I heard somebody refer to, you know, you know, naming Rubio as Secretary of State, uh, getting what's her name, Susie Wiles, who was very active in helping DeSantis win his first race for Florida governor, and then very effective in helping Trump defeat him in the primary, and now Rick Scott, possibly as your Senate Majority Leader, they're forming a Florida mafia. You know,
Right.
I was very impressed and interested that Donald Trump reached out to Kathy Hochul and to Mayor Adams about fixing New York, and I think that's amazing. That he
I
want
wouldn't be surprised if Adam becomes a Republican.
you know, but the fact of the matter is that Donald Trump reached out. It's quote unquote, it's my city. I want to fix it. I mean, New York is a cesspool right now. I hate to say it. And if they can do something, I mean, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with the border and what happens with all the illegal immigration. It's crazy times, Fred. It's really, we're going where no man has ever gone. All right, it's Star Trek, if you
Yeah.
will. But I think I think we're in good shape. I think it's good. I just like people to just realize you run a race, somebody wins, somebody loses. Stop crying. Work together, and on your own benefit, work to get the guy that you lost to defeated next time. Show me somebody who's going to really come up, assuming, J.D. Vance would be the lead guy in 2028. There'll be others. But let's see the Democratic Party bring up some candidates that you go, hey, this is not bad. Maybe we look at this guy. You don't get that.
Because all they've pushed is the far, far left.
I know. So I think the mandate has been set. This election set a mandate. What you were doing was wrong. You have two choices now. Continue to do what's wrong, and a Republican will be elected in 2028, and the Senate and the House will remain Republican in 2026, or fix it. You have the power to fix it. You just got to do it. Simple as
Yeah.
that.
Well, on that note, I think it's been a good chat. I appreciate your time.
It's always a good chat, Fred. We always have a good time. That last one you did was I won't say hysterical. It had me smiling the whole time. I mean,
With Steve?
yeah. I mean, it makes you think back to all the stupid things we did when we were trading, and none of that we could do today. But I mean, all the silly things. And again, Timmy could do an hour special just on all the things he did. I still tell the Jack and Jill story to people, and they laugh their ends off.
Yeah.
So
We got to resurrect that one.
yeah,
The one I like, I told them with the guy in Credit Lyonnais, I'm 30-60. If anybody joins my bid, hit them.
yeah.
It's like,
Oh boy, the
all
problem
right,
with
man.
doing a podcast is that you'd have to make up names of everybody because you couldn't get anybody to admit to the stupidity that they did. Have a good one. Take care. Thanks for
You
being.
too, my friend. Yep.
Bye bye.